this particular party is talking about hate speech messages and the clips going round that sort of paint and tainted in a bad image. But again, you can remember that the Ministry of ICT said that we are a free state and hence we cannot do that because freedom of speech also lies within our constitution. So whether or not NCAC will be acting on that particular clip, that still remains a matter of wait and see. But remember, when it comes to the issue of leaflets, so far the Interior Ministry has arrested 8 persons who are suspected to have been the ones who have been circulating those particular leaflets in the county of Uasin Gishu. Away from matters to do with politics, I just want to take you through matters to do with food security, which is also again one of those stories that has clearly made its way on the front page of this particular daily. Looking at the details there, we remember that earlier on we had talked about the issue of drought as well as food security in our country, but also as it turns out we are now being urged to go back to indigenous foods just to improve diet as well as food security. And this also has been largely tied on the skyrocketing prices that we have been experiencing so far for the past few months when it comes to food commodities there. When you look at the skyrocketing prices of maize flour, so to speak, so this is this article is just trying to highlight here, just citing that the recent rise in the price of maize flour, popularly known in Kenya as unga, is a clear message to farmers, consumers, researchers and policymakers in our ailing food system to just try and look for other forms or indigenous foods, so to speak. But again, when we come to those details, I'll also be telling you what the CS of Agriculture said in respect to this indigenous foods. And again, what was also being profiled is that, is this the right time to be having this conversation of going back to indigenous foods just when we are in a crisis of matters to do with food security and the high prices of unga? Jane.
Now, coming back to the Daily Nation and the Star newspaper, there's one particular story that has been captured on both dailies. This is in regards to 12 voters, at least 12 voters. On the Daily Nation, they point out a different figure. But here on the Star, they point out that at least 12 voters want UDA out of the polls for nominating Gachagua as the running mate for Deputy President William Ruto. But generally, they're speaking about the same story. So the story focuses on a group of activists that want Gachagua, Sakaja, and 12 other politicians barred from this year's polls. This is because they claim that these individuals have violated the Leadership and Integrity Act. This is in Chapter 6 of the Constitution by being involved in criminal activities, or rather being suspected of being involved in criminal activities. Here on the Star, they go on to give a list of these politicians. We have Rigathi Gachagua, Johnson Sakaja, Samuel Arama, Muthomi Njuki, John Waluke. We also have Evans Kidero, Anne Waiguru, Aisha Jumwa, Okoth Obado, Mohammed Ali, Oscar Sudi, and Ali Korani. So these are the individuals that this particular group of activists want the courts to bar them from participating in this year's general elections, and they also want UDA to be collectively barred from, or rather deregistered by the Registrar of Political Parties for having nominated Gachagua, knowing fully well that he was suspected in a particular case that, of course, we got the final hearing for. So now they go on to say that UDA specifically has shown radical indifference. Oh, lawyers and these big words. They've shown radical indifference towards its duty to ensure fidelity to integrity and leadership values as a party. So now they want this process to be expedited, given we have about how many days to go to the polls? Less than about 5 days to vote, and they want this matter to be expedited, and we get to hear the final ruling by Monday, a day before the polls. And on the other hand, you're looking at the fact that ballot papers have already been printed. Any of these individuals looking at the different offices that they're running for, those that are running for elective positions, the ballot papers have already been printed. We're just awaiting the formal notification by the IEBC that everything is set and have been sent out to the different polling centers. So what does this even mean? Like, should they be officially barred from participating? But the ballot papers have already been printed. Dorit, will they go and cancel out the name in every ballot paper to just make sure that this individual does not get voted for. You know, election preparation is a very sensitive time, and having cases like this being brought up just 5 days to the general elections is quite concerning when it comes to the preparation of even this particular group. Like, you knew you wanted to do this, but you have to wait until the last minute because it costs money to print these ballot papers.
And you can remember also that's what largely locked out Ruben Kigame, because IEBC was saying that we'll need
to reprint
almost 1 million just to have his name, and this is only one individual on the ballot. And again, just as you rightly put it, Jen, this is why IEBC is also talking about the 11 counties whereby they still have these unresolved cases. So the question is, you are raising a very good question, because these names are already on the ballot. Why? Because they were already cleared, and now they are presidential
deputy
candidates,
presidential, among many others.
Exactly. So you can imagine that these names are already on the ballot. In the event that now the court rules otherwise, what happens? Or in the event that these cases, which are already in court in this particular 11 counties, and then the case rules in favor of them, will they include these names on the ballot? So it's a catch-22 kind of situation, and it also puts the country in a place of Kenyans thinking then maybe we are not ready for these elections.
And then the other, the law clearly says you're innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly.
But this particular group of activists, they go on to say, I don't know if it's here on the Daily Nation or the Star, that, as I drop my paper, that the concept of innocent until proven guilty, the presumption rather of the declaration of innocent until proven guilty does not apply to criminal suspect seeking elective seats.
But the law is not selective at the end of the day. It needs to be cutting across.
Well, that's that particular story. It's both on the Daily Nation as well as the Star. And given today is Entertainment Thursday, on the front page of the Daily Nation, there's a story concerning Sauti Sol. We all love Sauti Sol. I love Sauti Sol. So they, about 4 years ago, they got a record deal with Universal Records. But they recently disclosed on their social media platforms that they have broken ties with this particular record label. And this is because, one, their contract was nearing its expiry, and it was either they renew it or they break ties. And they chose to break ties in order to focus on their own record label, Soul Generation. But looking at the time that they were under Universal Records, they were able to put out one of their most popular albums, Midnight Train, but they, according to Bien, who is one of the band members, went on to say that they are now focusing on producing their next album, which will be fully produced under their record label, Soul Generation. And this is a move that many people have had different opinions about, but personally, looking at the fact that they decided as a group to break ties with such an international big brand like Universal Records to focus on a record label that is Soul Generation, that is back here at home, says a lot that we need to applaud.
Supporting our own.
Because, you know, looking at how much more they stood to gain with this record, as opposed to the much more work they need to put with their record label to ensure people that we can produce quality music, quality videos, quality artists, and make good money, is a move that we need to applaud.
Oh yes, and we're here to give you a quality show. But before we continue, time for a very quick break. We'll return with what the different dailies still are holding for you. Stay put. You're still on Good Morning Kenya, and we continue with what the different dailies that we are holding for you this morning. And let's just come back to the Standard, still on the campaign trail with the different cases of violence that are now being recorded. And you can remember, this is why there's a clear message on just trying to ensure that we uphold peace in this particular election. And going by what we have here is that 745 women assaulted in campaigns. This is what this particular report now indicates. And now just these 745 women comprise of the aspirants together with their female supporters who were abused before, during party primaries. This is actually a report that was released by the Federation of Women Lawyers, that is FIDA, that revealed that. And also what is coming out is that a majority of the women who were subjected to electoral, sexual and gender-based violence were from Siaya County, which had 59 cases, followed by Kisumu and Nairobi counties with the 40 assault cases. So Siaya takes the bulk of most of these cases whereby, sexual and gender-based violent cases have been reported in the country in respect to particularly women, the women aspirants or women candidates in the various seats there. Away from that, we now look at that story concerning the Form 34As and Bs and what IEBC now is saying. Remember that earlier on IEBC had talked about having two Form 34As, and the question was then, where does that leave the Form 34B, or what will be the work of that? Remember, within our constitution, we need to just be having one Form 34A and one Form 34B. 34As, which is supposed to be used in the polling station, and then that transferred to the returning officers, whereby they need to be filling that in the Form 34B. But now IBC has come to well explain this, and I'll just run you through basically what they talked about in respect to this. And they say that complaints or discrepancies that may arise in Form 34A will only be resolved by the Supreme Court through a presidential election petition. IEBC declaration also means that should any of the presidential candidates or agents point out discrepancies in results captured from the Form 34A, then only remedy is to file an election petition at the Supreme Court. He further on just went on to say this was in respect to the chairperson responding to Azimio, One Kenya and Kenya Kwanza formation. You can remember, again, this is also one of those times where we saw the two main frontrunners closing ranks on a particular issue in respect to this election. And so in response to this, this concerns, so to speak, about the result declaration of the form known as the Form 34A. Chebukati also said at the close of the voting, the presiding officer is required to count votes and enter results in Form 34A, take a scanned image of this particular form using the KIMS kit and transmit the image to the National Tallying Center. And also just continuing by that address is that he explained that the constituency returning officer is required to collect all Form 34As, prepare Form 34B, and submit all Form 34As together with Form 34B to the presidential returning officer. So clearly just going to show you that the earlier directive of having two Form 34As is not going to be in play. Countering that is that we're going to be having only one Form 34A as it needs to be, and the Form 34B. So that on the polling station as well as it to be used by the returning officer there. Again, also the issue of having the manual register is again coming to the fore. We also expect the courts to address that. Remember that IEBC had really said that their primary source of identification will be the KIMS key. That is the technology there. If things turn a bit worse, then they might resort to the alphanumeric form of identification, and if things get really thick, that is just when they might resort to the manual register. But again, key concerns being profiled is that at the end of the day, that still needs to be at the various polling stations. So we're waiting to see how that court ruling is going to be looking like, whether or not they're going to be asking IBC to, at the end of the day, ensure that they have the manual register at the polling stations. Jane.
All right, let me now touch on a bit of health here on the Star. There's a piece concerning the state of the fight against teen pregnancies, gender-based violence, and HIV and AIDS infections. A while back, there was also a piece on this particular, focusing on this particular aspects on the Daily Nation and the ministry. And this was according to a report that was put out by the Ministry of Health, courtesy of Dr. Masdi Mwangangi, at an event that was hosted by the National AIDS Control Agency, where they said the biggest triple threat to teen and adolescent girls remain to be early pregnancies, gender-based violence, and HIV and AIDS infections. So this particular story here focuses on the efforts that the state needs to make in order to curb these particular vices, saying that the state should be intentional in this particular fight, with the country that has over 75% of its population being youthful, that are aged between, the youth rather, that are aged between 18 and 35 years of age, adolescents being categorized those between 10 and 24 years old, and this is according to the 2019 census. When it comes to reproductive health outcomes in our country, they remain wanting. Now, looking at these three factors, and given the fact that Kenya was recently ranked third worldwide when it comes to teen pregnancies, and this is also backed by the information that was put out by the Ministry of Health earlier on in the year, between the months of January and February, there were a total 45,700 cases that were recorded of teen pregnancies of girls aged between 10 and 19. Looking at new HIV infections, it was put at 98 new weekly cases. Every week, 98 new HIV infection cases were reported of teens that were aged between 12 and 17 years of age, man. It's very sad, but they go on to say that the lack of political goodwill and a conducive legal policy and environment continues to be one of the biggest challenges when it comes to addressing this issue, and also the conversation around unsafe abortions, saying that ignoring the impact that unsafe abortions has on our young girls and burying our heads in the sand will continue to be a pain in our back, and we need to handle this matter head on. So you can go ahead and read more of that here on The Star. Doreen.
Yeah, let's still stick with the Standard, and this is in respect to the slashing of allowances for the members of parliament. This is a recommendation that has just been recently given by the SRC. And it has obviously elicited mixed reaction amongst Kenyans, amongst the lawmakers. Just to go by what some of them are saying, is that there's one who says that I firmly endorse the move by the Salaries Commissions to slash allowances and car grants for legislators, as this will go a long way in saving on taxpayers' money. Remember that MPs as well as senators, they have, different sittings in parliament. I think MPs is about 4 a week, and MPs is 5, senators should be 4 per week, and every of this seating there's allowances allocated to them. So what had been coming out is that if they are elected to be in parliament to represent, legislate, oversight, whichever role it is they're doing, and they are paid for this job at the end of the day, then why again are they being given allowances? And their job just entails being there. They're coming up with these laws, policies, could be in parliament or in the different house committees. So clearly, looking at that move by SRC to particularly scrap the allowances of the plenary sitting is what I'm just saying has really elicited a mixed reaction. But again, also what is being profiled is that once we see the 13th parliament coming to office after this election, they're just saying that this could be one of those conversations in parliament, and just this move by SRC might not really sit well with them, and they might just again also end up scrapping it off. So we wait to see how all that will be looking like, because what really is really coming out is that this is for the benefit of the taxpayers at the end of the day. Away from that, let's quickly look at this particular article on the various alternatives that we might just be trying to look into as a country when it comes to food, and particularly carbohydrates. And this has also been occasioned by the high rise of unga prices. We are alive to the fact that yes, the state has reduced that from the previous price of around 210 to 100 shillings thereabout. But again, remember, this is very limited, because as they mentioned is that this is supposed to take place only in 4 weeks. So it simply means that after the election, or slightly after that, we might just be going back to the previous price of, this particular commodity. So which alternatives are in existence for Kenyans amid, this high cost of this kind of commodity? Just going by what we have here, and again, citing the issues that have also got us to this particular point, citing the issue of the rains, which as predicted by the Met Department, they were below average, and farmers in despair. They have just been watching as their crops dry, and so they do not really, have an alternative, so to speak. But food aid dispensed in these areas is below, again, also the food requirements of the household, but it is giving hope to mothers that their children have something little to eat in the hope of for better days. So looking at these alternatives that are, being put forth includes sweet potatoes, cassavas, arrowroots, bananas, yams, sorghum, millet. I mean, Jane, do you think it's time that we need to start thinking of something different except just unga ya ugali na ugali kila wakati? Think of cassavas, of yams.
It's interesting because some of those are considered traditional meals.
Yes.
And sainde watu wanaanza to realize, we need to go back to this. But they've always been there. They've always been a healthy alternative, especially for things like bread. You can always switch it up for that. But ugali is bae. Ugali.
It's our staple
You're not
food.
Kenyan if you don't appreciate ugali. So I understand the need for you to just have ugali, at least even if it's just once a week. But hey, to each their own. So
you're saying we can't quite substitute. We can have this, but to see now we are doing away with this thing.
Ugali kabisa.
It's strict.
And you actually see how much more it's valued by people who maybe travel outside the country and go to spaces where this particular brands of maize flour are not available. Even sausages, people always complain, sausages are home, sausages are Kenya, compared to those from different countries, they just hit different. So kuna kutu wako kautamu.
Yeah, and actually just the other day, the CS for Agriculture, Munya, came under the fire for telling Kenyans that we need to be substituting this. And the question was, why? Because is this coming at this time? When we are in this food crisis, do we need to look at long-term solutions as opposed to just short and mid-term?
And it remains to be one of the most affordable forms of meal for most Kenyans.
Exactly.
So when the prices go up on that, what other alternatives are you proposing we go for? Because trust me, other alternatives would cost more.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let me bring you finally to this last story here on the Daily Nation. A report that was put out by FIDA that listed 14 counties that are most hostile to women when it comes to this campaigning period. And Siaya is at the top of this list, followed by Kisumu, then Nairobi County. Now, the others are Kericho, Marsabit, Kisii, Nakuru, Vihiga, Busia, Narok, Kitui, Kitui, Bomet, Uasin Gishu, and Mombasa. These are the 14 counties that have been termed as most hostile for women, and especially during these periods that we are in this electioneering space. And they go on to advise women to be more vigilant, to be alert during this particular campaigning period, building up to the big day that is the 9th of August. So you can read more of that here on the Daily Nation. Kwako sasa.
Let me just stick on the election matters. And Jen, you really mentioned that, just 4 days to the polls. In terms of campaign, this is 48 hours, according to our constitution, whereby meetings and campaigns need to end. And we are seeing the two main front runners really going back to those areas which are normally termed as strongholds, particularly for each of them. And there's also a clear way in which you're seeing them, particularly going back to the Mount Kenya region and specifically Kiambu County. Remember that Kiambu County is the second county with the highest number of voters. This is after Nairobi. About, I think, 1.3 to 1.4 million voters. This is after Nairobi, which is 2.4 million voters. So when you look at these particular places, clearly one of those areas where you'd really be seeing these candidates going to. And just going by what we have here is that the DP addressed campaign rallies in various centers in Kirinyaga and Kiambu counties. This is just a few days after his main opponent, that is Raila Odinga, visited the area with his running mate Martha Karua. So what you're seeing right here is that what we call the undoing, doing, redoing. So when we have one candidate going to Kiambu today, we are having the other one go there, tomorrow, 2 days after. And again, we also had a report which released just the number of times that these candidates have been to these areas, particularly as we mentioned, the strongholds. And we look at Mount Kenya to be specific, countless number of times that they have been there. Remember that what we have had so far is that if Raila Odinga really has to, come out as the winner, then there's a certain threshold that he needs to at least close in that particular region. Then we have, if DP has to come out as the winner, then we are being told that ideally he needs to continue regaining ground in that area. So if you see them going to this area just 48 hours, or particularly 4 days to the polls, it's quite significant for this candidate. So that's what we have here. And also this particular report again highlights the poll ratings by the various pollsters. Remember that as of yesterday, which was August 3rd, was actually the last day to ever conduct and release polls. And that is also within our constitution. So it means from today onwards up until the election, we will be having no opinion polls from any pollster, because they're hard up until yesterday to do that. And we've also seen quite a number of polls just being released either by Ipsos or Infotrack in this past few days. So that is what you have on the different dailies that we had for you this morning. Jane, Tukimaliza, we do believe you're in our best position to grab whichever daily best resonates with you. But you can always keep talking to us. Let us know where you're watching us from. We are using the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Our official station handle ever remains to be at KBC Channel 1. My handle is at Jane Wambui. My coach is at Doreen Arangi. We take a musical break, but we'll be back to continue with Good Morning Kenya and all the goodness, all the good that we have lined up for you. Do stay with us.